Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Marc Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
And welcome back to another episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Recovery and Resiliency. I'm your host, Justin Wolf, joined by always by my co-host, Marc Regala. Marc, how you doing tonight?
Doing wonderful. How about you, Justin?
Hanging in there. Just got back from a conference in Rhode Island, so that was a great time to get out there to see that lovely state and kind of go check out the beaches and the coast and really connect with some other professionals as we were kind of out there talking about motivational interviewing and really, showing up there for people in those moments where they feel like where in a sense, like hope has been abandoned, right? And the idea that things can be different. So had some great conversations out there with just how we can kind of band together and show up for people on those days. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. What about on your end? What is new?
It's a good question. I just, about a few weeks ago, two and a half weeks ago, went to Florida for a week. Was on the beach. Needed some R&R. First vacation in 4 years. So I was training like Rocky and Apollo Creed, running on the beach with my shirt off, Justin. There's your visual.
Of course. Suffered a tougher, tatted on your lower back. Lovely.
No tattoos yet. So, no, but it was good. It was good to get away. It was good to kind of recharge the batteries. I needed it. It's been a very busy year, been a busy few years. So, it was nice to just kind of get away, enjoy some sun, some swimming, some good seafood. Yes, I ate a lot of seafood when I was down there. And now we're back and we're ready to finish off the year, man.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, it's been a long time since you got a vacation. You actually listened to yourself and kind of gave yourself that gift, which is huge. Than just grinding.
Exactly. So, but I made sure there was a workout facility at the place I stayed.
Oh, of course. I'd expect nothing else.
Yeah, it was crowded, too. It was crowded.
Well, hey, man, I'm just sure you brought a nice selection of shirts without sleeves. So I'm sure you were ready to roll for that.
Tank top, suffer the tougher muscle t-shirt with an American flag and 2 more tank tops. And a pair of swimming trunks.
Man, that sleeve monster's just running wild in your suitcase there.
Jeez. What are we talking about tonight, man?
All right. Well, I think we're talking about what we're doing right now, right? This is kind of what makes life meaningful, make it feel like it's purposeful, is really like that connection piece. And I think, as we're kind of talking about like the way of the world, the way things have gone, and the challenges that everybody kind of face on a day-to-day basis, and especially talk about overcoming the challenges and facing the challenges and dealing with those inner battles that come with substance use disorder and mental illness. Just kind of the strength that it takes to persevere through. Even, when it may feel like at times, hey, externally it may look like I got everything in my life that I might want. I might have the job, I might have the family, I might have the house, I might have, externally, taking care of myself, and it might give the impression that everything is all right and things are good, right? It's kind of like you kind of look at people like, oh, they got it together. They must be doing pretty good, right? And that can trigger some envy, jealousy, things like that. But that doesn't always mean that things are well put together and that everything is okay. Because those inner battles, that inner chaos can really kind of be lurking there, and it can make, kind of get people to the point of asking themselves, hey, what's the point? Why am I doing all this? If I grind and I grind and my grind, what's the payoff here? Because I don't feel like I'm really getting it, And that's really what I wanted us to kind of like talk about tonight. Really, it's just focusing and tuning into meaningfulness. Because we can have everything and still feel like something is missing or something is profoundly broken inside of us. And I think that's really when we find that meaning and we find our sense of purpose. Like these two are separate, but they're connected. And I thought that's, Mark, where I know like your story, your experiences that you've shared, people that we've come across, right, who've been, you know, that we've been lucky enough, I should say, to have
Yep.
people kind of bare their soul and share their inner world with us about what it feels like when meaning and purpose feel like it's lost, and what happens when they feel like, hey, I found it. You know, I found that meaning, the thing that makes my life feel like it's significant and that there is purpose attached to this. I now found the thing that kind of makes it okay for me to get out of bed in the morning versus, oh God, I woke up again. Why am I here? And that purpose is the thing that takes that meaning and gives us like a compass. It kind of points us in the direction. This is what we want to choose to move toward. And so that's kind of what I was thinking we could kind of spend some time talking about and kind of covering tonight.
Well, I mean, I will tell you right now, the way you started out about the job, the house, the family, all that stuff, you just described my entire life. I mean, you really did. I mean, from
Right.
the outside looking in, I mean, I had a good job. I was making good money. I had a nice house. I had a beautiful family. I was in the insurance industry. Worked my way up the corporate ladder, and I still felt exactly the way that you just described everything during your opening words.
Because I think that's the piece where it's like inside, who really knows what's going on? Right? There's a lot of energy and a lot of effort put to kind of keeping that stuff at bay. And we can become like super, I was about to use two like really, verbs there. That's the word. To describe very attentive and very aware that, hey, I can't let any of this kind of come through. I can't give the impression that I'm just holding on by a thread. I got to give the impression that I'm confident, I have it all together, there is no cracks in this armor, and I can't let people see that I feel like I'm crumbling internally right now, and that I'm riddled with self doubt and criticism because that's paralyzed. I have to find a way to keep powering through and going through the motions. But I know you've kind of talked about that before. It's just kind of like going in and letting that autopilot kind of kick in.
I mean, I really was never in a career that I chose. I mean, I guess I chose it, but I mean, I kind of chose it by default for the simple reason, I had 1 year of college and got my high school sweetheart pregnant and did the right thing. I got married and had my son at the age of 19. And the reason why I chose the insurance industry was because my dad was in the industry. And all my dad had was a high school education, and he was very successful in the industry. So I figured if he did it and he could do it, I could do it. Now, my dad, I will tell you right now, hardest working man that I've ever met. I mean, I used to say goodbye to him on Sunday night, and a lot of times not see him again till Friday for dinner because he was gone before I was up for school in the morning as a kid, and he got home after I went to bed. You know, during the week as a kid as well. So I mean, that's the one thing he instilled in me was my work ethic. And the insurance industry is interesting because you are helping people, and I do enjoy helping people. And I used to say you're helping people in their greatest time of need, car accident, house fire, or God forbid somebody gets sick in the household, somebody can't work, or God forbid a premature death, to provide, loss of income to the family. So, I mean, it's a noble industry. And I enjoyed selling insurance and helping individuals. But, as the family grew and I had the need to make more money, I chased money and I got into management because it was going to be the quickest way for me to hit my income goals. And I think that's where a lot of the feelings that you described started kicking in. It just you lost the connection of sitting across the kitchen table, which now you don't even sit across from a kitchen table, but that's how it was back then. Okay, meeting individuals, hearing their stories, providing guidance, providing education, and helping them put a plan in place. And then you get into management, and now all of a sudden, you're kind of like a bean counter, if you will. I mean, you got marketing dollars, you got to make sure that's spent correctly. You got to hire so many people per year, you got to train so many people per year. They got to get up to a certain production level, and it all affects your compensation. And if you do it well, you can make a good living. But to do it and do it well, there was no work-life balance, and you just feel like this is it. I mean, all I'm doing is waking up in the morning, going to work, and coming home at night and going to sleep. As I talked about before, no exercise, no time for myself. Diet sucked. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, it reeked of depression, and then on the weekends, still no time for yourself because now you want to try to be a dad. You're going to baseball games, softball games, family obligations. There's a family party, with the in-laws or whatever it might be. And, you can only sustain that for a certain period of time before there's a chink in the armor. You know what I'm saying? And, with me, there was underlying mental health. Like I said, I was an anxious person. I suffered from social anxiety. There's no doubt about that. So when I got into management and had to be in a room with executives, I just didn't feel comfortable, man. I didn't wear the expensive suits. I didn't wear the expensive shoes. I didn't wear the expensive ties. Honestly, I hated wearing dress clothes to work, but I had to. I used to tell my wife all the time, if God forbid something happened to me, you know, die of a heart attack or something like that, please put me in the casket with the White Sox hat on, a White Sox jersey, and a friggin' pair of jeans. I don't want to spend eternity in a shirt and tie. I hated it, but I had to do it. And then that's where the drinking really started kicking in because I realized really quick that if I had a couple drinks, I kind of came down a little bit, if you will, and felt a little more comfortable in that room. And I can go approach the CEO of a Fortune 600 company or go talk to the senior vice president. And I built great relationships, but it was great relationships built after a couple of drinks of alcohol. And that pretty much persisted over a period of time. The alcohol usage got worse, and then no poor diet, no exercise, put on the weight, and that's when the back issue started, and that's when the opiate addiction kicked in. But I felt stuck. I felt like I kind of was forced into this career. I was good at it, and I provided for my family. But I felt that there was something else out there for me. I just didn't know what was out there for me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's like you said, like that stuck feeling. Like I think that's a very, relatable feeling and experience for most people. Where it's like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like, where do I go from here? Like I don't feel
Yeah.
like I have another choice or another option. Because, like you said, being the provider, having the family kind of, be dependent upon that income and the role that you were playing there. Like that's a lot of pressure, especially when you don't feel like it's resonating with the work that you were found yourself doing at that time being meaningful.
Yeah. And then getting into recovery and having so many conversations with different people, men, women, different ethnicities, and so forth. Really, what I described is pretty much what you hear on a daily basis. I mean, there's a common theme there. People just feel stuck in this rat race of life, and is this it? There's got to be something more from me. Their thoughts start running wild, and again, that's leads to some effect on their mental health and probably some poor habits starting to develop. I mean, that's usually beginning signs of some of those poor habits.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Like when you feel like you've lost your sense of purpose and your sense of direction isn't really there. Like that's a painful and empty pit. And what do you do when you experience any kind of pain? You're going to want to try and get rid of it. It's just what
Yep,
people do. It's what we're
exactly.
hardwired to do. It's like, and it's just gnaws at you and it just shows up. And it's like, let me get some relief from this. I just want to kind of turn this down. I want to stop feeling this. And I know you've talked about creative ways that people go and that you went, right? Like, this just makes sense. Like you said, like the diet, the depression, it's just kind of eating, right? A lot of people will turn to food as a way to comfort, to soothe, to distract. Because it gives you like that just flood of like dopamine when you're kind of like just eating those really unhealthy foods. But like what comes with that is a huge crash. You come up, but now you kind of spike. And that's why like the mood, like anxiety and depression are just, what the food, like you've talked about it before, like the food you put in your body plays a huge role in our ability to regulate our emotional experiences there.
And I think what's important for the audience to understand is a lot of the chaos that I reference, with the alcohol and the substances, specifically the opiates, when the back issue started. That was a 5 to 6 year period of my life from like maybe the age of 39, maybe 38 and a half to age 45. I got sober at 45. But the thing about it is, and this is very important, it was the run up because there was probably 10 plus years, maybe 15 years of no work-life balance, poor diet, lack of exercise, just not living a healthy lifestyle, well-balanced lifestyle that led to the self-medication, that led to the chaos, that eventually led to my sobriety. So it just doesn't happen overnight. I mean, there's a run up, and a lot of times over the course of a lifetime.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like this insidious situation you kind of find yourself in, where it's like it just starts infiltrating all these different areas of life, and it's not just overnight when it's like I feel like something's off, I feel like something's missing. No, it starts getting into the relationships, the way we view ourselves, our thought patterns, and just the things that are important to us. Like all of a sudden now, if I feel like I have no meaning and I have no purpose, then where's the energy to kind of show up on a day-to-day basis going to be? Where do I pull that from? How do I kind of, act as if I really want to be here when I feel like I just want to disappear? Like that's a really taxing position to be in. And it can make you feel like I don't really have a purpose. I don't know why I'm here. And I think that's a hard thing in those moments to be like, even though I feel this and I think this, it doesn't mean that I don't have one. And I think that's where you said earlier, you're just highlighting what are the things that really make you feel like there is purpose. You highlight those relationship components, the things that you do, the people you connect with, how you are showing up, and how you're able to see what you do in your work. Like you said, like there's parts of it that you kind of like found were meaningful, where you're able to contribute for people such as your family, or you're contributing for those that are, entrusting you to be there as a support on those days where nothing seems to be going well. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody help another person and then feel worse about themselves. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's 100%. And then it's like, what's weird about everything, and that's why I just tell people, we talked last podcast about mindfulness, living in the moment, trying to have your best day, win the day, all that stuff, right? I mean, the more you can embrace that, because I think by doing that, making the right choices on a day in, day out basis, a lot of people end up finding their purpose in life. I mean, I've heard that over and over and over again, specifically like in the recovery world, whether somebody's coming off a mental health crisis or a mental health and addiction crisis. I mean, there's some beautiful stories that are out there, but it started with the chaos and them getting out of the chaos and them practicing mindfulness and living life in a much healthier way that led to some opportunities that presented themselves for them to find their purpose. And I'm evidence of that, obviously, but there's so many other stories of that I've heard that it's beautiful, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's like you think about how much energy and effort and time is put into running away from ourselves and the behaviors that kind of go with it when you feel like that meaning, like when we feel like that meaning's been lost, to slow it down and then have to reconnect with ourselves in a completely different way and attend to that and really listen to and trust that what we are hearing when we ask ourselves that question, what makes it worth this? And we hear that response and be like, that actually is true, and trusting it. When you kind of fall into a place of like, I don't really even trust my own thoughts anymore. I don't even trust myself. Like this is a complete 180 in the approach. And you see like what's the results of listening to it? Like it's powerful because what we connect with in that moment, following it, taking what we actually offer ourselves as truth is actually powerful. And that's where it's like, this is actually aligning with what it is that I feel is actually important and like worthwhile in this world. And now you got a whole different roadmap on how to kind of navigate situations, how to navigate and show up in life. Even when life might not be going the way that you want it to go, you still have that, that compass, that true north that you might call it. That's kind of guiding you in what's the next right choice that I want to see myself make. What is it that genuinely aligns with what's important to me as a person to be giving and connecting with in this world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to use me as an example. Like I did do a little research, previous to this podcast because you gave me the topic. And the one thing that I read about when they was talking about meaningfulness was coherence. And it says understanding how past, present, and future experiences fit together. And if you actually go back and listen to probably several podcasts, I've always talked about like how I felt like it was a chess game from above. Like I personally feel it in my heart and my bones that I was put through the storm when I was put through the storm, which was pre-COVID, and I got sober during COVID, and I was shown the way by several people in AA, and that one gentleman that spoke in the hospital, almost like in preparation for what's going to happen post COVID. I mean, the timing couldn't have been more impeccable. I actually feel that in my heart and my bones, and I knew when that gentleman spoke at the hospital that I wanted to do what he did because he changed my life in 45 minutes. And I don't care if he did 150 hospital presentations prior to that. In my opinion, if the way he affected my life, that was worth all the 150 presentations. He saved my life. I mean, he really did. Okay. So my thought process is, focus on getting to a year, start doing that. If you can just help one person by speaking at the hospitals, one person, it's worth it. I feel that. And then the other thing too is like when you start talking about connection, it's you're talking about connection as far as contributing to the well-being of others. Even before I was speaking at the hospitals, I was making some changes in my life. Let's just say from 6 months to a year. The first 6 months, I had people holding me accountable. The second 6 months, I was taking things to another level. And, that's when, some people saw some changes in me. And, we started that text group that I've talked about before. A bunch of guys that I went to high school with, we were all going through stuff, divorces, some custody battles, I mean, lost their jobs. I mean, we were all at that age at that particular time, mid 40s, we all decided, everybody wants change, so we started, texting each other, when we're going to the gym, sharing our meals. If somebody's going through a hard time, we're all kind of stepping in and, giving them support and so forth. And, contributing to them and making them healthier for their children, um, helping them get through a tough time, as you said earlier. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel better on the inside as well. So that helped me with my recovery, like early on before I was even speaking at the hospitals. And then as far as the purpose goes, clear value driven goals that guide that guide good life choices. I mean, I want to continue to go down the path that I'm doing, which is, sobriety and recovery and the recovery lifestyle. And then, hopefully instill that in others and let them know, hey, you can have a much better life by putting some corrective actions in place, and possibly learn from my experience and not lose your family and not lose your marriage, not lose your relationship with your kids. I tell people that all the time. Don't do what I did, except to help now, you know. But if you would have talked to me, when I first got sober or even when I was going through this stuff, I used to say I couldn't picture in a million years. The truth is, or I couldn't dream this in a million years. I could have never have dreamt the changes in my life. And it's not like it was intentional. I mean, all I was doing was just trying to be a better human being every day, physically, mentally, and spiritually. But it was by being a better human being every day is where I kind of found my purpose, if you will. And it led me to the work that I'm doing in the community now, but it was completely by accident. It was just me trying to be better. But again, I've heard that over and over and over again. And I know you have too, with people that are living a life of recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it kind of always reminds me as you're talking, like my mind is just going to like a couple different places right now. And it's jumping right to like the story that's like tried and true throughout generations and eons. Like we were talking about like a hero's journey, right? You kind of look at what's the story of a hero's journey, right? There's early on, there's tragedy. Something happens, right? And they're face to face with a choice point. I can either go this direction or I can kind of go this direction. And this direction forward is where I want to kind of go, but I feel lost, right? And there's adversity and there's trials, there's tribulations, there's tests that come. And what ends up happening, right? You answer it. even you see that you're capable of more than you believed you were possibly capable of. And you see that there's other options and other alternatives when you feel like, hey, with this other option over here, it's bleak, it's lost, it's pointless, and it's hopeless. And I think like when you talk about like your story, your journey, your experiences, like that very much ties into that. And as you were talking earlier, like I'm just like my mind's going to this place of like, yeah, like I've worked and work a lot with like young athletes who their whole identity, their whole meaning, their whole sense of purpose and direction is associated and tied in with their athletic performance and their skill set. And I get that because historically, like in the past when I was much younger, uh,
Yeah.
like for me, like I could relate with like feeling like, okay, like baseball is what I do. That's who I am. That's what I do. That's my purpose. I'm supposed to throw a baseball hard. Does it hit a guy? Yeah, on occasion it does. Whatever. That's not my problem, right? like,
Yeah.
um, but that's kind of like this is what gives me meaning. I feel good because I do this well. I throw harder than most, and so therefore, like if I can execute this, well, there's my purpose. Well, now what ends up happening if I lose that? And for me, like like we've talked in this story, right? Like I felt lost when I lost that. When all of a sudden my arm and my labrum is gone, and now all of a sudden my arm's all jacked up. I can't figure it out, so I'm lost, and I feel like I'm drowning because that was everything. And now if I don't have this everything, then I'm absolutely nothing. And we know like that's not true. And a lot of the young men I work with and I talk with, like it's a very similar experience that kind of gets tied into this, where it's like the thing that gave me a sense of meaning that made me feel worthwhile and significant has been ripped away from me. And now I'm lost in a place where I don't know where to turn, what to do. Who am I? And so turning to those things that try to numb the pain, take away from the pain, and what the challenges and the and like that payoff that comes of navigating these uncharted waters that we're never expected to be having to kind of navigate through, and to see like, okay, I can get through these like turbulent seas of what is my inner world to a place of calmness and stillness and still be okay with who is looking back at me in the mirror. And I think that's kind of what the gift of recovery offers, is seeing that there is purpose, there is meaning, despite what I might have believed my initial meaning to be. I've learned through the adversity and the experience of what I've had to face, what I've had to overcome, and how I've navigated this to see that there is other options out there that are much more meaningful and fulfilling because of everything it's connected with in terms of like those relationships, those contributions, personal growth that I think you highlighted earlier. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
spoke to that beautifully. Like, just seeing like there's more inside of each of us that's there, and we don't tend to notice or acknowledge, because when we feed what's important to us, like we just tend to grow and flourish as individuals and let go of these self-limiting beliefs and ideas that we've carried that kind of date back to an earlier part of our life. And as we grow, we kind of expand that. We see that there's more to this than what I was initially telling myself about this. And when I can see that there's more to this, there's actually more of what I actually want to have present and moving in that direction. And also kind of, acknowledging the pain and the hurt that it took to kind of get here is important as well. And that's part of what makes it so meaningful and purposeful, is knowing how much sacrifice, how much pain was endured to get to a place where we are today. That makes it that much more meaningful, right? You know what I mean? Like it was just anything that was meaningful didn't come with without pain, without a sacrifice, or without challenge, because it's that whole experience that really reinforces just how important this really is. And I
No,
think
there's
that's,
no,
oh man, like that's just me. That's just
no, I mean, there's no doubt about, I mean, if you, again, use me as an example, obviously I like helping people because, I mean, that's what you do in the insurance industry. But I made that comment earlier. I used to believe that we're helping people in their greatest time of need. They get into a car accident or there's a house fire or whatever it might be. Yeah, I mean that sucks if that happens. But the ironic part about it is I sometimes cringe when I think about the fact that I used to say that, because really in the recovery world, you are helping people in their greatest time of need, because in a lot of situations, just like with my situations, it could be a matter of life or death. I mean, in some instances, you're helping people not die and show them a better way. So I mean, you're helping people, but it's a completely different type of help. And I guess the reason why I'm so passionate about it, I'm going to go back again to my days of AA. I mean, those people didn't know me. My initial sponsor didn't even know what to do with me. I mean, he was an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. He didn't know anything about opiates. But then he brought another guy in that was a heroin addict in recovery. And that guy brought another guy in that was a pain pill addict in recovery. And next thing I know, I got 3 or 4 sponsors that I'm working with, and they're answering phone calls at very weird hours. Okay. And they would always take my phone call, and they were there for me. And they never knew me. They were I mean, I was a stranger to them, but they cared. And then you go back to the hospital with that gentleman. I mean, just the power of the live life experience and being able to share your journey, just like with you with the young athletes and your journey, and having that conversation with them. That gentleman changed everything in my perception on everything, in his comments that he made to the group, but then also the comments that he made to me individually. And, as I said before, I mean, if that man would have told me to try to run through a brick wall, I would have tried to run through a brick wall. I took his words with the help of my sponsors at AA and a lot of research and work that I was doing on my own. But that's the thing, I was doing all this research on my own about diet and what foods to put in your body to drive your serotonin levels, and what's a natural way to get your dopamine up, as opposed to the cheap dopamine with poor habits and so forth. And I was trying to replace the bad with the good, but at the same time I was educating myself, never thinking in my wildest mind that that I would be talking to somebody and providing them the education that I learned along the way. I was just trying not to die. I was just trying to stay sober. I was just trying to get my mental health in check, get in recovery, and eventually get a job and, start paying my bills again. So it was just, I was in survival mode at then, but in survival mode, dealing with all these trials and tribulations, you're expanding your knowledge, and you're taking that knowledge and now you're giving it to a group of individuals. And it's very self-serving. I mean, I've said this before. I mean, when I speak at a hospital, I tell people straight up, this is, I hope you're going to get something out of it. I'm here for you, but this is just for me as it is for you. I mean, I tell them that straight up, because I enjoy doing it, and, it keeps me grounded, and it gives me great joy to see people change their lives. I mean, I've seen a lot of miracles. I know you have seen a lot of miracles as well. That's why I make that comment, that there's a pulse, there's hope. I believe that as long as there's a pulse, there's always a possibility for somebody to change their lives, get healthier, get sober, get their mental health in check. And a lot of times by doing that, your life kind of makes a turn, and you find a new purpose, or something much more meaningful to you along the way. I was just talking to a guy the other day. I don't want to give too much of the story out because I want to protect his anonymity, but he's in sobriety now for a couple of years, and he's actually starting to he's thought about this since he was like 15 years old. He's like close to 60. He wants to write children's books. Okay. And because of everything that he's been through in his life, and all the chaos in his life, and all the curveballs that were thrown at him, he's like, you know what? What the hell at this point? I'm going to pursue a dream. I always wanted to write children's books. I'm going to start writing some children's books. And he's starting to do it. I mean, I know another gentleman that was doing some time in DuPage County Jail for a drug related crime. He was an addict and an alcoholic. Got sober in jail. Again, somebody about my age, in their 50s. He had to kill time when he was in jail. So what did he start doing? He started drawing. And his cellmate's like, man, you can draw. He told me, Mark, I've never tried to draw my entire life. I mean, he was a teenage father as well, so he never tried. He's like, all these people are telling me that I'm a good. The prison guard, the guard or whatever, is telling him, man, you can draw, dude. So he goes, I got out of jail. He goes, I wanted to maintain my sobriety. So I was drawing and then I started painting. Well, guess what? He started painting. He opened up a painting business. He paints murals and he's making more money than he's ever made before. And he loves doing it. And he never knew he can draw until he got into jail. Those are the stories that you hear, man.
Absolutely. It's kind of about, these are the things that make life meaningful, right? And I think that's kind of a beautiful way to kind of like capture everything we've talked about tonight, is just how when you find it, it kind of makes it like the direction and that feeling of purpose just kind of really take home inside of us. So I think that's a lovely way to kind of bring it home, Mark.
Sounds good. Kids are starting school here this week.
Jesus,
Heck,
yeah, 3 days. 3
the
days.
next time we talk to the audience, we're going to be talking about friggin' Labor Day already. Where the hell does year go?
True.
Kind of scary. So,
well, on that beautiful note, thank you, Mark, for the reminders of what is upcoming here this week. So, and thank you everybody else for tuning into these podcasts. We appreciate everybody joining us on the 15th and 30th, tuning in. So if there is any topics you'd like to hear Mark or myself, well, am I saying like it's a one or the other show? It's a duo here. So like to hear us talk and dive into, feel free to share that with us. And until next time, appreciate you all tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.